Hi, everyone. You're listening to Let's Psyconnect. This is LT.
And this is Ronnie.
You might also be watching us as we are recording this conversation here today. We have a special guest with us. We're going to talk about mindfulness. Ronnie and I, we both love the idea of mindfulness, and we try to implement it. We do, as I guess we are in our early stages, we still have questions about it. And our clients also have questions about it, and our friends as well. So we want to have this to take advantage of this opportunity today to address maybe myths and reality and other topics or questions associated with the idea of mindfulness. So Ronnie, please introduce our guest speaker today.
Of course, LT, thank you for that introduction. And I think mindfulness is one of those words where we kind of have a general understanding of it, right? But it can take so many different forms, and that's why we are so grateful to have Dr. Elizabeth Cronin here today. So I'll just read a short bio for Dr. Cronin, and then we'll go ahead and pass the mic and get started with some great questions. Elizabeth Cronin is a clinical psychologist in private practice in Brookline and Norwood, Massachusetts. With broad training and a variety of approaches to treatment, she creates personalized plans to help her clients reduce anxiety and increase overall well-being. She is a host for the New Books Network podcast and interviews authors of books for the Psychology Channel, as well as Spiritual Practice and Mindfulness Channel. She also leads a training process group for psychiatry residents at Boston Medical Center. Dr. Cronin has a doctoral degree from William James College, a master's degree from the Harvard University Graduate School of Education, and a bachelor's degree from Boston College. She has completed the Mindfulness Without Borders certification training and is currently enrolled in the 2-year Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Training Program offered by Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach. She is passionate about mindfulness and excited about the documented benefits of this popular movement. And we are passionate about it as well. And we are so excited to have you with us, Dr. Cronin. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being here tonight. And it's going to help us clarify our own questions and our listeners and viewers as well. So if you guys are listening to us, you can join us. You can watch this conversation, as I said, like you can watch it on YouTube as well as Instagram. And if you have any questions that you want us to address later on, send us an email discussion@letspsyconnect.com. Without further ado, let's get started with some questions here.
Yes. So first and foremost, Dr. Cronin, I just read your bio, very impressive. And I just want to ask you just to tell our listeners and us a little bit about your journey to where you are at now as a professional.
So I guess I feel like I got to this profession by having a certain nature as a child. I was very sensitive, sort of observant, curious, and had a lot of anxiety. So sort of struggled with that throughout my childhood and always interested in why people behaved the way they did and how people came to choose to say the things they say. So we always had that sort of natural curiosity. And so ultimately I found my way into graduate school in psychology. And I was really lucky to my first year of training. I did a PsyD program, which is a little different because when you do a PsyD program versus a PhD program, you actually start with a practicum your first year.
Sure.
And the first year is at McLean Hospital, and I was able to work at a women's treatment center where they had stepped down from being inpatient. So they were residential and they spent the night, but they weren't in a locked ward and they could come and go freely. And it was all group-based work, and it was dialectical behavior therapy. And it was so impressive to me because it was very clear it made a dramatic difference for them, and it was making a big difference for me. I was initially sitting in the groups and observing, and then later co-leading the groups. And this was such a powerful introduction to mindfulness for me. So dialectical behavior therapy was created by Marsha Linehan, who's someone who had done a lot of cognitive behavior therapy, but had also been exposed to meditation and mindfulness. And she found a way to blend the two together to treat some of the most difficult people that had been suicidal and were self-harming, people with really serious trauma histories and sometimes addiction. So powerful introduction, and it really shaped where I went forward. And from that moment, even when I did a year of training in working with infant mental health, and I worked with mothers and infants, and I did a year in a community clinic, and I worked with families and mothers. I did some psych testing. So I've done a bunch of different stuff. And the thing that shaped me more than anything was my exposure to mindfulness. So that was sort of my where I first got introduced and got hooked on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing not only how you got hooked on it, but also a little bit of your growing up experience with feelings, emotions, and thoughts, right? I mean, it's really hard, first of all, to talk about emotions, and as mental health professionals to share that side of the vulnerable side of ours with other people. So thank you so much for that. And I do think that it helps people see a little bit of the human side of us too. So yeah. And so with your journey, I guess, up to the point where you got hooked on it, so what was it about mindfulness that really attracted you? And then what is it, or how would you define and describe it?
So mindfulness, I go by the definition that credit to John Kabat-Zinn, and that is this: mindfulness is really paying attention in the present moment without judgment and doing it intentionally,
Yes.
with intention. So it's you're planning to do it. It's not like because we can have an accidental moment of mindfulness where we're all of a sudden very, very present that we didn't plan, but this is sort of intentionally. And so I like that, because for me, what that means is that if I'm present and aware of what's happening in the moment, I can pause and I can check for what just happened, rather than the alternative to being present is that something happens and we immediately go into our head and we start having commentary about what is going on. So if you can hit that pause button between something happening, like someone looks at me a certain way and all of a sudden I'm going, why did they look at me like, what did I do wrong? How come she doesn't like me? Did I wear the wrong outfit? I mean, that happens automatically for most of us. And so for me, being mindful is to be able to say, that's a funny look I just got. Pause. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe they don't, but maybe they just came from a difficult situation and they're not, they're thinking of something else, and that look doesn't have anything to do with it. So that's what mindfulness for me, that's what really hooked me, was that it opens up opportunities for you to have a whole range of ways that you can interpret something that up until I got exposed to it, I had felt like I had been trained to just like, this is what this means. This is what this means. And then, so there's freedom that comes with it.
That is so inspiring.
That is great. That's
when it was interesting at McLean Hospital, we were using Marsha Linehan's workbook. We were using it with the patients and in the group. And I used to carry it around with me. I mean, I was like really devouring. I'm like, this is really good stuff. And one time I left it at the Stop and Shop, a local grocery store. I left it in my grocery cart and I was like, oh no, I had it's in there. I had to go back and get it. So I go back to get it and then go to customer service. And this woman's there like, no, you want to give it to you. So it's just very powerful. And I've had people I've worked with who've said like, we just need to put DBT in the drinking water before.
I agree.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, no, I just want to comment, two things. So number one, it is such a powerful concept, but the beauty in it for me is that it's a very simple concept, right? The idea of mindfulness and the benefits from it are quite direct and quite profound. But I think that where the complexity comes in a little bit is although it does have that flavor of simplicity to it, it really takes quite a bit of, and correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, but quite a bit of practice and introspection to have that pause moment, to kind of get to a place where you're able to tell yourself, okay, let's pause, let's be mindful, let's be present. Although it seems like a concept that a lot of people, it may be easy for them, what I seem to have found is that it actually isn't that easy for much of society, right?
Right. It's not. It's a simple concept, but it's difficult to do. Okay. So what ends up happening is what I was saying, is like throughout our life, we're actually trained, and not just trained, but we're also taught certain things. Like I recently talked to the author of a book called The Possibilities Principle, and he was getting into quantum physics, and he was saying how even our science curriculum in schools is still based on 17th century science, where we were taught like the world is almost machine, and that we're individuals and we're all out there, when in reality everything is connected, everything's in constant flux. We don't control anything, nothing stays the same. So we, even in our school, we're taught things, and it's in our language too. I mean, he was pointing out to me like this idea that we're machines, or people are objects, and you know, he was saying people even say, I have a screw loose. You know what I mean? My wiring is off or something.
Right.
How, oh, this marriage has failed, as if, you know, again, this machine mentality. So that's really hard to overcome, because not only were we taught this, and this is part of like, it's the neuronal pathways that fire up automatically, are these thoughts that we've had over and over again. And then the media reinforce them. Like, you know, you're on your own and you're in a competition with everybody, and you need the whitest, brightest teeth. And, you know, it sells this idea of being, you know, really independent. I've been trying to like really go deeper in educating myself about, you know, racism and those issues. And it's another thing that I'm really learning comes up, that this like us all being individual and not remembering we were all connected and same, is really so, it holds us all back. And so from seeing possibilities. So it's very difficult. However, if you are exposed to it enough in any way, like for me, I wasn't meditating. I was showing up twice a week for 6 hours or 7 hours. And it was sinking in. So could I do it in every situation? Could I pause in every situation? No. But as soon as you start to realize, once someone opens your eyes and says there is that possibility, you can start to do it in lower level stress situations. You can start to do it like when you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, and you can say, boy, I just laid on the horn. And my experience teaching people has been that people start to realize, oh, that was a missed opportunity. Before they actually can do it, they go, dang, I really missed that opportunity. And I'll say, that's fine. That's part of the process, is starting to see, oh, okay. Yeah. And the thing that's very powerful about it too, is that it takes a lot of the burden off feeling bad for the way that we think, or the things we automatically do. It's saying, it's really no one's fault. You know, it's part of our conditioning, and we've never, until you are exposed to another way of thinking about it, it's sort of our default. So it is challenging, and yet as soon as you discover this opportunity, you can start and you can continue to develop. It's a set of skills, and it gets it's actually, my experience for people, it gets very, very rewarding. I will say too, though, it does help to have support, like have a therapist who has some training, or join a community of people that, you know, are practicing mindfulness practices or meditating together. Read books, listen to podcasts, you know, keep exposing yourself, because without it, the whole culture is just pushing us in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you make so many points that are so, again, connected and illustrates the difficulties in someone absorbing the idea of mindfulness and the importance and the rewards of mindfulness, and how they can easily also reject the idea of like, why am I going to do this? Or this doesn't work for me. I tried it. I'm just going to give up now, you know, or I failed in this. This doesn't work for me. So again, like the idea of the machine, and we are raised in a way, you know, throughout, I guess, the world. I can't speak of every single country, but some of the cultures that I am exposed to and whatnot, it's in a way that we are always on the go. So that machine that we have to produce, we have to deliver, we have to do all of this. And then when you're actually checking with yourself, it is very difficult because you don't know what to do with those feelings. You don't know what to do with those thoughts, and you go into the negative pattern. And you have been willing, right? Because for you to sit through 7 hours, 8 hours, it's not easy either to be exposed to something that is new, challenging. And so you are open to it. You open yourself. And so we often ask our clients to navigate through the idea of being willing to experience something different. And mindfulness can let that, right? Can allow for that too. But if they're not willing, it's going to be really hard for the mindfulness to be something that is going to be instilled inside of them, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And one of the things too that it's challenging, I think, is because there are a lot of myths and false perceptions or misconceptions associated with the idea of mindfulness. And you even spoke about meditation too. So one of the things is mindfulness the same as meditation?
That's a good question. I used to be confused about that too. So like, are you a psychologist or a psychiatrist? It's one of those. Mindfulness is really a way of being present in the, you know, in doing whatever it is you're doing. It's a way of being very, very present and being able, it's an awareness of what's going on right now, right here. Okay. And not only what's going on right now, right here, but what's happening to me, you know, as I'm sitting right now. So that's mindfulness. And mindfulness you can practice mindfulness in a lot of different ways, and I can come back to that if you want later. But meditation is actually a practice. It's actually something you do, and it takes many different forms. And this is part of why it's really confusing, because you can do a walking meditation, you can do an eating meditation, you can do chanting, you can do so many different ways to practice meditation. You can use a mantra. So there's many different ways, and there's many different schools of training that you can look into. But in general, whatever you're doing when you're meditating, the goal is that you're trying to increase your ability to be aware of whatever it is you're doing, whether it's walking, eating, or, you know, you can do like a very popular meditation is metta, which is loving kindness. Mm-hmm. And so it's really very, it's a practice, and it's something that, one of the things I like about all of this is, again, there's just no judgment, and there isn't really a right or wrong way, and you don't have to pick this or that. You can experiment and find whatever works for you. You can do it and then not do it for a week and then get back to it. There's no one's going to say, well, now you have to start all over again. There's none of that. Mm-hmm. The lack of judgment is helpful. But there are two different things. So a lot of people that meditate become very mindful because they practice being present. However, I did get exposed to mindfulness and felt like I practiced mindfulness for a long time before I started to meditate.
I figured this explanation or the answer was just brilliant. I hope people are getting that. But if not, it's okay too, because we know it can be complicated.
It's complicated. I mean, I actually have a little prop here. I don't know if it would be effective to try to show it to you, but when I teach my introduction to mindfulness meditation, I try to help people see that what meditation does, what we're trying to do when we're present in the present moment, we're grounded in the present moment. We're right here. We're not in our heads thinking, which is what we're so trained to always think, like gives you the competitive advantage, right? If you want to win, you got to outsmart people. So we're so accustomed to going there. And what meditation is, it's a practice that if you do it regularly, it helps facilitate getting to that place where you're just in the present moment, in your body, experiencing what's going on right now. And so when I'm trying to teach people this, and they struggle with it, because for most people, if they try it, and when I first tried it, I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, first of all, I have a lot of stuff to do, and that's all I think about. What am I doing? I have to do this. So I had a lot of restlessness. And I guess what meditation is, in the end, what you're trying to do is you're trying to, okay, yes, we all have restlessness. You get through restlessness. Can you learn how to tolerate that sense of restlessness without having to jump out and act? When I'm teaching, I show people it's a good visual. Like I have this snow globe, and our minds are like the snow globe, and they're whirling with thoughts and fears and judgment. And the idea is the longer you sit, the more that eventually that does settle. And how long it takes is different for each one of us. I take a long time to settle.
Oh, wait, can I steal that from you? Borrow without having to pay for it. I love that. I mean, that's when I just tell people, sit with that anxiety. It's like so abstract. What do you mean sitting with that anxiety? I thought anxiety was bad, and now you want me to sit with it?
That is wonderful. I'm going to get a snow globe ASAP.
And the other day I was asked to, because I was nervous to do something in front of a couple of people, and then they asked me, like, oh, what usually happens? I'm like, I just sit with it. That's fine. It's gonna go away.
That's the interesting thing. When you sit with something, it actually doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It settles.
Yeah, it settles. Yeah, definitely.
That's an interesting thing, because when you were mentioning that, there are myths about mindfulness or meditation, and, one of the myths is that you can get to a point where, nothing's going to bother you. You can get super Zen, and, then you can be laid back, and you'll never have conflict, nothing will ever bother you. And that, all your problems will go away. Problems don't go away. Don't go away. But they don't need to provoke you to say or do things you later regret. They can be sat with until they get to a point where they're all on the ground in a nice little pile, and then you can sort through the problem.
I love how you use the word settle. Like you'll pick up on what I said, like to go away, and it's something for me to work on as well, because I also don't want to give my patients or clients, friends, everybody out there the wrong impression. And so yes, that's definitely a myth associated with that. And our language, how we use language, right? How we verbalize, not only about our feelings, but whatever we're experiencing, it's certainly influencing how we also cope and stay willing and committed to the experience.
Right.
So Ronnie, go ahead, because otherwise I'll just here.
No, this is such a great conversation, because I want to jump back actually to something you said in the beginning, Dr. Cronin, and I appreciate you sharing with us, how you got introduced to mindfulness. And I wanted to share as well to you and our listeners that I actually had a similar situation. So it was in one of my first practicums, and I was at a residential center as well. This was for eating disorders. And I heard the idea of mindfulness. It was something that I never really read up on or tried to seek out more information on. And as I was watching over the groups and how it was conducted, and we started with the mindfulness practice, it was so interesting for me to feel that everyone in the group, including myself, we partook in the practice as if we were all individuals, all equal. And for me, I think that experience just increased my willingness and want to understand more with mindfulness and incorporate it into my own clinical practices. So with that being said, I do want to ask you, if you have a patient or a individual who is hesitant about doing mindfulness, right? And that's something that I encounter quite a bit. So they're either nervous to sit with their own thoughts, or they haven't sat with their own thoughts in a long time. What would be something that you would tell them to kind of give them a better understanding of mindfulness, or why it could be helpful?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Well, first of all, my mindfulness training informs how I would respond to that if I thought, you might benefit from developing a practice of meditation, or you might benefit from trying to become a more mindful person, which are two separate things. And they say, well, what do you mean? Or I've tried that, I don't want to do that. Or I would stay with them, be curious. I would practice, and I would demonstrate for them the benefits of it right there in the moment. So in that moment, I'm practicing being present, because I'm saying, I'm right here right now. I'm noticing I made a suggestion you didn't seem to like, or you don't seem interested in, or you're expressing would be hard for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Which is mindfulness training. I'm noticing someone just slammed that door. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that was intended to offend me, or if there might be something else going on. So right in that moment, one of the things that I think is really powerful is the way we do a lot of things in therapy. We model a lot of things for people, and we give them a different experience. And that experience of my ability to just recognize and accept, and then be curious and be non-judgmental. Now they're already getting the benefits of mindfulness. And that over time, I'll help them sort of see that, and that often helps them. So that's one way.
Great.
Yeah.
And again, it's a great example for us of professionals, the psychologists to be in and whatnot, or those who are interested in getting this professional, so how to make this connection with the client, and here, like being a role model, right? Modeling, giving an example of the situation, and because it's right there in the moment where they are learning something, and hopefully they will be taking it outside of that office so that they can, this is it. And they'll continue to practice that. Because most of the time they feel like they're in a safe space where they can actually do it. They can talk to us about our feelings or emotions, right? Without, again, feeling like they're being judged for it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of modeling, right? Your response, it being a mindful response and being present, naturally elicits a presence that they must come into as well, right? To kind of meet you where you're at. And I think that was a beautiful example of doing very subtle modeling, where they start to enter almost your mindful world as well by proxy.
Yeah. Which can then influence how they communicate with others, right? Like when they are caught in a situation in a relationship, or where they are having this idea, like, well, this is how they communicate with me. Now I can implement this in my communication as well, which will allow me to be more mindful and respectful of my own feelings as well as of the other person too. That's a whole change that we're creating, hopefully.
One of the things that's interesting is that, in my training along the way, learning about how to recognize that someone might be ready to terminate and getting into like, well, does therapy go on forever? Or how would you know when somebody's had enough therapy or whatever? And of course, it's personal for every individual. At the same time, a little hint that someone has done the therapy well or gotten a lot out of it is people will say, I only see you every other week now. But last week when I didn't see you, something happened. And I was thinking, what would Elizabeth say? What would Elizabeth do? What would Elizabeth say? And so that's that internalizing the modeling.
Yeah.
So even people, I've worked with people, I use mindfulness concepts with everybody. And not everybody I've worked with would say, oh yeah. She was using mindfulness with, necessarily no. I do a lot of psychoeducation, and I explain a lot, and I use the language from DBT, like the terminology, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness, and I talk about the wise mind. I use a lot of those concepts and all of that, and I'll say this is from DBT, but for the most part, I'm just really trying to embody it and model it, and because they don't have to practice mindfulness, but if they've experienced a mindful moment in their interaction with me and they go to that place of like, well, would Elizabeth honk back? Or would Elizabeth say, well, maybe that person's rushing to the hospital. So that's another way that, you influence people.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder if one day people will be like, what would LT say?
Do that, you think to yourself, oh, they don't need themselves, thing. It's I always have mixed feelings when I have that conversation with people, but I do bring it to attention, and then and then people sometimes do a piece of work. And I think the modern model I'm seeing for psychology is you go, you have a crisis or something, you work on something maybe for a year or more or whatever, and then you wrap it up, and then 2 years later, you have a new job change or a relationship change. And I love this. I mean, people come and go, and someone was saying we all need to just have like a therapist that we can just check in and out of, like we do our.
That is the ideal world for sure. I believe in that as well. Yeah. I want to ask you, so even when you're providing psychoeducation, and it's something that Ron, you brought to our attention too, so talking about the thought, and one question that people have brought to my attention is, so mindfulness is the same as like having a blank mind. Maybe not with those words, but the idea is that I cannot stop thinking. Well, mindfulness mean that I won't have those thoughts anymore.
So that's close, but it's not accurate. It's not a blank mind, but again, if you want to go back to like the snow globe, our minds are so busy, they're clouded with lots of thoughts and fears, right? And so it's hard to see clearly, right? When everything is swirling around, all of this stuff is blocking our view. All we can see is these thoughts, these fears, the same old stuff that plays out in our head over and over. Mindfulness is not an empty mind, or I'm not sure, it's a clear mind. Because over time, all that stuff, all those thoughts settle. They don't go away. They're all still there, but they're not swirling around and blurring your view. You can see more clearly. And like I said, the pile of stuff that finally settled still needs to be sorted out. I mean, mindfulness doesn't make problems, challenges, old reactions go away. It gives you a chance to let them settle and get to a place where you can come back to them when you're not so emotional, when you have the time and the energy. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes a person to sort through it with you, not something you have to do on your own.
Yeah, which again leads to building like this is something that you practice. It's not something that you just go from water to wine overnight. It's something that you gotta work on. And the idea of like working on something is already, oh my god, I have to work on something else. No, and I'm not getting paid for it. I'm actually paying for that. There's a lot of negative associations with that too. Ron, you're gonna say something? Sorry.
Yeah, so we've talked quite a bit about mindfulness, and thank you so much for those examples and descriptions, Doctor. So I was wondering if you could give us some insight, especially to our listeners, on what some mindfulness skills are. So we've talked about it, and we kind of have an idea about mindfulness and what it might look like. But what about some of these mindful practices? So what are some of your favorites, or some that you have found the most helpful?
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, the thing about the one thing about practicing mindfulness, or even meditating, having a more formal practice, is you don't need anything to do it. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in introductory courses on meditation, people are taught and encouraged to just use your breath and pay attention to your breathing, because you have it with you at all times, and just getting in the habit of like stop, take a deep breath is a good way to just reset your physiology even. So so there's lots of different ways you can do it. You can take advantage of a drive and just start to notice. So it is kind of, it's like a mindset about what am I supposed to be doing in this car ride? Do I need to be thinking and problem solving, or can I just observe and take things in? So that's one of the ways. Anytime you're just observing and being curious, you're making space to be more mindful. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anytime you're judging or reacting, you're probably in your head having thoughts about whatever it is you're seeing. You're not actually there experiencing it. You're reacting to a perception of it. So there is one thing that I think is a very powerful thing, and a lot of mindfulness meditation teachers talk about this. It's an acronym and very powerful. I learned it from Tara Brach, but I know other people use it as well. And it's called RAIN, like, because it's like the rain, like the thought, like, so that it helps me remember it. But the R, so this is a practice you could do anywhere, anytime. You feel slighted, or you feel suddenly anxious, or you feel your stomach dropping, you're disappointed. Anytime you're just having a moment where you're feeling heated up, like you're starting to get angry, you can say, let me just use RAIN. RAIN can prompt you to say, I recognize I'm getting angry. I recognize that hurt my feelings. I recognize I'm feeling impatient. RAIN. Can you accept it? Can you just accept it and let it be, versus do you have to pretend you're not having the feeling? Do you have to go numb yourself and get, drunk or use drugs? Or do you have to blame someone? I mean, there's so many ways we do not accept what we're feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So can you recognize it? Can you accept it? Just let it be. And then the I of RAIN is investigate. That goes back to that curiosity, like, oh, I wonder if there's any other way to consider what's going on. I wonder if that person might be going through something and this doesn't have, so that's that investigate. Or how true do I think that is? Or have I ever had that happen before? Why do I, so that's, or what does this situation remind me of that might be making me upset? When it's actually not this, it's a memory of something. Mm-hmm. So that's the investigation. And then the N is a bunch of things. Some people use it as like nurture. So then when you recognize, accept, and you're investigating, be nice to yourself. Don't nurture yourself. Don't be judgmental. Don't get angry at yourself for having a moment where maybe you misperceived something, or maybe you had a big reaction. That was me growing up, always having big reactions. And it was always, why are you so sensitive? Why? Like, you just make a big deal. And so, I did that to myself a lot. I'd be like, oh, I don't know why I'm so sensitive, why I have to be like this. And so just being nice to yourself, nurturing yourself. And the other way people talk about the N is being non-judgmental, which is nurturing to yourself. Like,
Sure.
don't have to make it be a bad thing or your fault. Just, you know, be kind and gentle to yourself. So I like RAIN because it's just something that you can try it out. Anybody listening can try it out. I guarantee you tomorrow, if someone wants to, there'll be an incident where they can say, I recognize. And one of the things, and you guys might have seen this too, is it comes up in therapy sometimes, is someone will come in and you can really do a piece of work when someone comes in and goes, you know, I'm afraid you're going to think this is stupid, or I know this is really silly, or this is kind of trivial, but I couldn't sleep last night because I kept thinking about how this happened. And I'll be like, this is awesome. I'm so excited. Bring the trivial, bring on the silly, because that's something you can start to work with. It's, if they already recognize that it's not a big deal, then you can really start to work with it. That's where it's easier. Because, you know, I think like you were saying, Ronnie, earlier, you don't just snap your fingers and develop and can be like this. You practice on little things, and just like lifting weights, you know, if I'm starting with weights, I don't start with 40 pounds. I start with 2 and 4 and 5 and right. So you start, can you use RAIN in the grocery store when you feel like someone just cut you off, or someone grabbed that last bag of chocolate chips and you know for sure that they did that to spite you? Can you just recognize? So that's probably the best takeaway I have for you.
I love it. I'm taking mental notes because I didn't want to look like I was writing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
You were there. You showed me.
Student.
There's so much to that that is wonderful. We can certainly apply that not only to our own lives but also to our clinical practice. So again, it's the whole idea of this podcast too, is also to enhance our own critical skills and thinking so that we can become better professionals. And tonight has been just wonderful. What you said there, and for me, it's something that so far, it's sometimes difficult to explore or to explain and entertain clients the word judgment. And talking about judgment from different perspectives, the negative association with it, but also calling, names, even if it's something beautiful, you know, it is a type of judgment. But sometimes when people just thinking about judgment, you're associated with something negative right away. And also applying the whole idea of RAIN in mindfulness with positive experiences as well. And being mindful of what also brings you, I guess, happiness and positive emotions. And sometimes I do go through that route first because they seem to be more willing to accept and investigate whatever's making them feel good rather than what's happening with the negative, and hopefully they can just transfer that. But I don't know if you've had that experience where like sometimes talking about judgment, it like I feel like the walls just build up.
Yes. So that's a really good question. I don't think that's specifically has come up for me. What I'll say is this though, is that the end goal of being present and being curious and exploring is a recognition that, going back to again, sort of that idea of quantum physics and the way we're misled, is that like we're actually taught to think that there's such a thing as objectivity, right? That somehow I'm a separate person over here. I can be talking with you and I can then evaluate and determine that was good or bad, what you did. And we do this all the time. I mean, we have scores for people's performance and all that. So we practice this all the time, and it's not reality. It's not reality. So we can get stuck on language a little bit, and people can get stuck on judgment. The idea is of not being judgmental is noticing how you're perceiving things, using your body to inform your experience in the moment, and then checking with other people and considering other possibilities, so that it's just expanding and it's freeing up and making room, making more space for more options than the limited options that are you win, I lose.
Yeah.
You know, is there a way we could both gain something here? But that's our default as part of the capitalist society and part of competition. But again, it goes back to, so judgment is subjective.
Yeah.
So
one thing that comes, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, that's it.
Now, so if the exercise of judgment and mindfulness, I don't know, like a couple of years ago, maybe I came across, I read something that it talks about mindfulness and gym. And you have more experience on the matter. You can please just restructure this for us here. So it was the idea that when you are working out, a lot of people working out and they're also listening to music. So they're not being mindful of the experience, when they are working out. So let's say they're lifting weights, but they pay attention to the music rather than to pay attention to the movement. And so one idea is that don't listen to music while you're working out and see how you feel. But not just one time and that's it, right? Because if you start talking to listen to music, then you're going to rely more on that. So you're going to want to go back to that experience. And as you are working out, let's say you're doing, I don't know how many weights you can do, a series, and then you're saying, oh, I'm tired, or this hurts, or this is painful. So then you apply judgment rather than just, I am lifting and that's it, action and that's it. So I don't know if this resonates with the idea of mindfulness per se. I just thought it was an interesting comparison, a way of explaining.
It's a really good one, because one of the benefits of mindfulness and meditation is increased self-awareness, right? And that's what you're talking about. So if you are paying attention to yourself, not being distracted by something else, at what point you get uncomfortable. And you don't have to decide, well, this is very bad. I mean, you just notice you're uncomfortable. This is unpleasant, right? And then you can make that call, or you can make that determination. By judgment, it's more sort of labeling it as bad or good or whatever. But we are trying to enhance our ability to make good choices. I mean, is one of the goals, is to not just make good choices, but to make good choices out of a broader range of choices, where by default you might be you pick up a certain amount and it hurts too much and you say, well, that's bad. It's based on what, right? Based on somebody else told you this, so it's all about paying attention. And when you start to pay attention to yourself, you just know. You don't need some outside expert to tell you, stop here. Your body tells you. And there's a connection between your senses and your decision making that we cut off when we're thinking all the time, because then we're making decisions based on these metrics that we've memorized and people have told, when really each person has to know their own limit, and each person has to be able to make those calls and get that information from themselves. I mean, that's part of what holds all of us back, is this predetermined scale that we try to apply to ourselves. It's not fair, because it was devised not taking me into account or taking you into account. It was devised, they chose, and this is how we're going to measure everybody. And that's not fair, and it doesn't leave room for us. But I like that you pointed that. I like that you pointed that out.
Thank you.
Great. So many gems in this conversation. Dropping so many gems. I'll say one more thing. I can't believe it. It's already been 50 minutes. Wow. Yeah. So I'll say one thing, and then I do want to ask another question. So when you were speaking about that, it makes me think about how, and it goes back to us kind of being robot, or the idea that we are robotic, right? And that we are machines, and taking time to be mindful and understanding our behaviors goes to taking time to understand the intention behind our behaviors. And I ran into that quite a bit in session with other individuals and with myself personally, right? Understanding, why are you doing this? Because it's something I think sometimes we get into very reflexive patterns, right? And taking time to be mindful also gives us time to understand the intention of a behavior that we may be thought was adaptive or that we needed to do. And I find that useful as well, and it just triggered that for me while you're talking.
Thank you for sharing. You said you have another question. I'm trying to be mindful of the time here. Got a little bit nervous. We've talked so much about the benefits of mindfulness. So I'm wondering from you, Doctor, is there any maybe downside to being too much in the present? Is there any literature or anything that you can share? Is this a thing? Is it real?
So it is. It's a very real thing, and the reason why everyone is becoming much more aware of it is because there's so much science backing this up. There's so much research being done, and I think almost everything can be attributed to like mindfulness or meditation. Like, you can deal with heart disease, you can deal with GI issues, you can lower your blood pressure. It helps with focus and attention, productivity. It helps with relationships. I mean, it's like the endless benefits of this. So it is very, very real and very powerful. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hearing about it. It really does transform people's lives and does make for more possibilities. That said, there is one area where there needs to be sensitivity. Some people have had real trauma. Some people have been through terrible situations, and someone with PTSD has intrusive thoughts that you don't want them to sit with over and over and over. That will be re-traumatizing them. So you don't want someone who has been physically or mentally harmed in some way to go over that and over that and over that, hoping that those thoughts and feelings will settle. Those thoughts and feelings need to be addressed, and they need to be talked about and processed. They're not to sit with by yourself hoping they'll settle down, because they're too powerful, and you need some professional help with that. And so there'll be people who, even on a retreat, will be sitting, if something really upsetting comes and it's too painful, that's another reason why you say to yourself, this does not feel helpful to me. And even in DBT, where I learned about mindfulness, they had grounding skills. If you're flooded with affect, you're flooded with intrusive thoughts, you can be mindful that that's what's happening. I am flooded. And you could be mindful that right now I need to call a friend, I need to listen to some music, I need to light a candle. And these are other, so those are sort of mindfulness activities that, like Marsha Linehan said, we need grounding skills, and we all need them. On a really bad night, if I'm super tired and I'm hungry and something goes wrong, you'd be like, you need some grounding skills, we all do. But that's the one area so it's not recommended for someone who hasn't gotten help with, processed, unaddressed trauma. That's not intended for that. But otherwise, it's really just returning to our natural state. It's really how we've been socialized and the ways that we've been trained. So it is a simple thing, and it's hard. The only reason it's hard to do is because the culture is working against us. The culture wants us to feel flawed, so that we'll buy more products, so that we'll sign up for more programs. I mean, that's built into a capitalist, consumerism environment. And so the hardest part is, where are you going to get your daily dose of, antidote to the steady diet of competition and comparison,
Right.
and you win, all that.
Yeah.
So I'm big, and I do talk about that with the people I work with all the time. I say, you've got to have a resource, because otherwise, it's everywhere. Billboards, magazines, it's on television, the radio. It's the way people talk to each other. You can't get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think, other than, being sensitive to trauma histories, I don't see it. Some people would say, like, does it threaten a religious belief or anything? No.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. You do not need to give up anything in order to embrace these ideas. They're not in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good question though.
Okay. And I think maybe someone might say they might be too mindful when they're really in that zone, I guess, so that they can't see something else happening. But I don't know if that happens so often, or if it's not a appropriate way to say I'm being so mindful that I don't see what else is going on. Maybe it's a misuse of the word. I debate on that, because it can be something that really works well for them, but doesn't mean necessarily that mindfulness. It could be just a trait or something else that is, I don't know. It's still confused. It's not 100% clear in my mind.
But there again, I'm going to say, that happens to you at some point. You are practicing meditation or something, you become that way. You would probably notice that happened, and you'd notice like how that affected other people or whatever. And now you know how to deal with it. Like, yeah. Right? It's not about getting rid of problems. It's like about noticing, like, oh, now I'm super into meditation. I'm obsessed with meditation. And some people get that way. Like, they're going to be the best meditator. And then ideally, if you're really trying to go about it authentically, you say, wait a minute, I recognize I'm acting obsessed. Can I accept that? Can I accept that and own that I'm acting? Yep. Why? Investigate. Why am I acting obsessed? Because every time I learn something new, I need to be the best. Right? Yeah. And then with that, you nurture yourself. You say, that's a hard way to live. I don't have to live like that anymore. You're nice to yourself.
Well,
go ahead.
I think that's the perfect antidote to a leave on. I mean, that's a great way to end the episode. Wow.
Yeah. I was wondering if you want to share with everyone how they can find you.
So you can find me online at drelizabethcronin.com. I have a website. I have a private practice, but it's full, and so I'm really not able to work with anyone new. That said, I'm working this fall on putting together some online material. So I am going to try to create some more content, share some of this information, put it out there so that more people can see it. And I have been doing some mindfulness groups, and I'll probably continue to offer mindfulness groups. I'm not in the middle of one right now, but that I'm really excited about, because you guys know there's only so much you can do when you're working with people one-on-one, and I'm trying to like change the way I work so I can reach a broader audience and really share my passion for this subject.
Thank you so much. We'll certainly be tagging you on our social media. You can also find information on our website, letspsyconnect.com. And stay Psyconnect with us in between episodes. As I said, we were on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, as well as Twitter. And remember, let's Psyconnect.